Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's presentation on supporting gainful employment of ESRD patients. We just want to take a moment here at the network to go over a couple of housekeeping things before we get started. Again, thanks for joining. We would ask that you mute your line if you're able to do that. And this webinar is being recorded, so we will make it available after the presentation for you to share with others as well.
Hi, this is Renee at the Midwest Kidney Network. We're very pleased to welcome Michigan Rehabilitation Services to today's webinar. The speakers today both cover Wayne and Monroe County. Our first speaker I'd like to introduce you to is Baina Robinson. She is the District Manager of Western Wayne County. She has worked for the state of Michigan for 26 years and with Rehabilitation Services for about 12 years. She has a master's in counseling and is a licensed professional counselor. Thank you so much, Baina, for being on the call today. Can you hear me, Baina?
Good morning. Yes, good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for the warm introduction. And under the circumstances, I hope everyone is in good spirits and is doing well. So, Michigan Rehabilitation Services, we are so happy to be available to you to provide you information about the services that we provide. Next slide. Our mission and vision. Our mission is to help develop customized workforce solutions for businesses and individuals with disabilities. Our vision is a diverse and inclusive workforce that unites businesses and individuals with disabilities towards a common good. Next slide. Michigan Rehabilitation Services, better known as MRS, offers individualized vocational rehabilitation services to assist individuals with disabilities in obtaining, maintaining, and/or advancing in employment. And who do we work with? MRS works with a vast number of individuals with a wide range of disabilities, such as diabetes, hearing loss, epilepsy, heart disease, back disease, and of course, kidney disease. Next slide. When individuals are interested in applying for services, all they would need to do is to contact the local MRS office to schedule an appointment to apply for services. At the end of the presentation, you'll be given some information about our office locations and counselors who are working directly with the dialysis centers in their local catchment area. And I do want to point out that in light of the current COVID-19 circumstances, the state of Michigan is complying with the social distancing, and our counselors are teleworking and will not be coming directly into the dialysis centers. However, they can still be contacted directly via a cell phone or email. And again, we will provide you with that information towards the end of the presentation. So after the individual has contacted the local MRS office, a counselor will be, a vocational rehabilitation counselor will be assigned to assist the customer to complete the application and answer any questions. The counselor may request documentation related to the customer's primary or secondary disability. Documentation related to the customer's disability is used to determine the customer's eligibility to receive services. Next slide. It's important to note that MRS is an eligibility program. It is not an entitlement program. Next slide. How do we determine eligibility? In order to receive services through MRS, the individual must have a physical, emotional, or cognitive impairment. The impairment must substantially impede the individual's ability to prepare for, secure, retain, advance, or regain employment consistent with their abilities and capabilities. The individual must require and be able to benefit from MRS services, and the individual must be available to work. What's important to note is that even though the customer feels that they can work, they may have the documentation that they have a disability, their medical practitioner must provide that customer with information releasing them, clearing them to work. That's a very important aspect of eligibility. They must be available to work, and that doctor or their medical practitioner must release them to work and be able to participate in the vocational rehabilitation process. Next slide. During the eligibility determination process, the counselor will work one-on-one with that customer and carefully review the customer's documentation supporting the disability. And if any additional documentation is required to determine the customer's eligibility, MRS may be able to assist with obtaining the documentation necessary to determine the customer's eligibility. I can clarify a little bit more in terms of how we assist with obtaining that documentation. Sometimes a customer may not be able to get access to their records. They may need some additional information. MRS would use a release of information, a written release of information signed by that customer to try to help with obtaining that information from the medical practitioner. Next slide. So now we'll move on to the vocational needs assessment. And Nico Dixon will provide you more information about vocational needs assessments, also called VNAs.
Good morning, everyone. The vocational needs assessment. During and after the eligibility determination process, the MRS counselor will complete a vocational needs assessment, also referred to as a VNA, to determine the vocational rehabilitation services required to assist the customer to achieve a successful employment outcome. Some of the factors that we look at is their strengths, resources, priorities, concerns, abilities, capabilities, and interests. Next slide, please. Individualized plan for employment. The counselor and the customer will work closely together to identify a feasible and meaningful employment goal. Once an employment goal is agreed upon, an individualized plan for employment, which is also referred to as IP, will be developed in partnership with the customer. Informed choice will also be involved in this entire VR process. The IP will include the employment goal, as well as any required services necessary for the customer to achieve their employment goal. Next slide, please. Some of the core services that we offer is vocational counseling, guidance and counseling, job seeking skills training, job placement assistance, job training, job coaching, accommodation, assistive technology, support services such as interpreters or readers. Next slide, please. Are there any fees for services? If the customer has medical insurance, the MRS counselor will review insurance coverages to determine if there is an unmet financial need. For example, a customer may need eyeglasses and their disability may have affected their vision. What we'll do first is see if their insurance actually cover the eye exam and eyeglasses. If not, we may refer them to one of our community partners or agencies such as the Lions Club, and if all fails, MRS will assist with such. Next slide, please. Oh, okay. So I'm sorry. The MRS counselor seeks comparable benefits and services available in whole or part IP before the services are authorized by MRS, and I gave a previous example of that. If those comparable benefits is not available, the MRS counselor will inquire about the customer's ability to contribute towards the cost before services is authorized by MRS. And just a note, next click please. Being unable to contribute does not impact the customer's ability to receive services. And again, if the customer has medical insurance, the MRS counselor will review insurance coverages to determine if there is an unmet financial need. Next slide, please. Do anyone have any questions about what was presented thus far? None? Okay, next slide, please. So when we talk about MRS locations, there are 83 counties in the state of Michigan that offer MRS services. There are 5 MRS district offices covering Detroit, Hamtramck, and Grosse Pointe areas. There are 4 MRS district offices that cover the Western Wayne, Downriver, and Monroe. Next slide, please. If you are interested in receiving MRS services, you may contact any of the individuals listed below in the Detroit area or any of the individuals below listed in the Western Wayne, Monroe area. And also we have, we talked Friday, and we have a roster of our zip code that will give you each office, the phone number, as well as the manager that's assigned to that office. Next slide, please. If you want to know any additional information about MRS, you are more than welcome to visit our website at www.michigan.gov/MRS. There you will find more information about the services MRS offers. We also offer services to youth with disabilities as well. And on that website, you will also see the MRS office locations throughout the state of Michigan. Next slide, please. Any questions? And we thank you for your time, but any questions now?
I don't see any questions in the chat box.
Don't either. No.
The good news is that this session was recorded. I don't know how many people were actually able to hear us, but if there are any questions that you maybe needed time to think about and you would like to have your question answered, please feel free to reach out to Kristen Ward, and we will be sure to follow up with any questions as soon as we receive them.
Good morning. Thank you, Bay and Nico, for that presentation. This is Benita King speaking. And I did want to, I had a conversation with Renee, and I did by email. I just wanted to let all of the providers know of any of the clinics where they're working with individuals on kidney dialysis or other issues that due to the COVID-19 medical emergency, at this time, all of our counselors are teleworking, working from home. And while the agency is open, we are being discouraged from going out to have any face-to-face contact. And so if you have individuals that you might want to refer, it would be a good time to have those conversations with the individuals that may be listed on that sheet by zip code, because we do want to begin those conversations so that we can understand the customers that you're working with and how we may be best able to serve you.
Thank you so much to everybody today that spoke from the Michigan Rehabilitation Services, Baina, Robinson, Nico, Dixon, and I just I just thank you all for attending, and I'm so sorry for any problems with the audio, but we will be sending the recording probably this week yet. So thank you all.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks for having us. We appreciate you.
Thank
Thank you so much.
Okay, take care. Be safe.
Bye-bye.
Bye.